Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I just came across a headline that caught my attention. A young female Chinese tennis player said that she wished she could be a man, but only on court, only when she is competing in a tennis match, not generally, just in that very instance. Now the background is that she couldn't perform on the field as well as she had wished for because it was her special time of the month and that frustrated her. That is very understandable, of course. She's competing in a women's tournament and, well, other women have a different cycle and then it is her disadvantage on that day. And that is frustrating, I get that. I just found this statement so interesting. She wishes to be a man but only on court. Does that mean she wants to be a man playing against other women on court? Well, then she would just knock them out of the park. She would just dominate them on the field, and that is why you don't see mixed tennis, only in double. I think that even a retired tennis player after a pack of cigarettes and 5 beers could easily win against an active female player. But that is not the point of this video. I just was inspired by this headline and I contemplated a little bit about what has changed in the feminist or the female mind these days as compared to previous decades. We all know that in first wave feminism they wanted the vote, but they didn't want the draft. In second wave feminism they wanted the career and the money, and they wanted to be seen more as equals to men. When I think back of second wave feminism, the way I remember it, these women really wanted to be seen as men. They wanted to be treated like men, and that is only because they knew that this is not in the cards. They knew that this would not happen during their lifespan, and that is why they said that. Of course, they didn't actually want to be treated like men. At least the more intelligent ones among them obviously knew that that would suck indeed, and they just claimed that they wanted to be treated like men so that they can achieve their current goals at the time. So now we proceeded to clown world feminism, and I lost track of the number of the current wave. I just noticed that they kind of dropped the claim that they want to be treated like men. They of course want their special treatment and their special privileges, and they want to choose how they want to be treated depending on the current situation, and that can even change over time. They want to be treated like a man now, but they don't want to be treated like a man in the future. And when they are at work, they want to be treated like a man, but not in the meeting room, only in the supply closet, and tomorrow it could be vice versa. And of course the statement, you should treat me like a man, or I want to be treated equally to a man, this is just a crutch, so to speak, because we all know that the goal that they are having is ultimately to dissolve and to eliminate all these mentions of the sexes or genders in general. Every reference to women or men will not be PC anymore in the future, or is already in some places not PC anymore. At a conference, for example, it is considered sexist to hand over a bouquet of flowers to a female speaker after the conference or after her presentation. At the same time, however, they want special privileges at the job or at the university, and they want to be promoted as professors and as group leaders and department heads and even above that. And that brings me to the number one demand that these young professional women have, and it is only women, according to my experience, who ever demand that. This number one demand is a management position in part-time, as a part-time position. And then they offer like tandem models where there would be 2 women sharing one department head position or one upper or middle management job, which is of course a logistics nightmare, it is a communication nightmare, and it is a complete lack of leadership that ensues, of course. And once again, I have never heard that any man demanded to be given a part-time department head position or something like that. It is very understandable and very easy to grasp for a man that if you want to go into management or if you want to become a professor or something like that in certain hard science fields, you have to sacrifice a lot. You have to sacrifice family time, quality time, etc. But women, they want these positions and they don't want to compromise on their quality time. Also, I noticed that in the past they were talking about Gleichberechtigung in German, which means equal rights. Now they are not talking about that anymore. This word has actually become a dirty word. Now they're talking about Gleichstellung. That means roughly translated to be placed or positioned equally, and I would translate it as not equal rights but equal outcomes. Equity instead of equality, so to speak. Yeah, and we have adopted that in Germany now also. There is no more Gleichberechtigung, there is only Gleichstellung, and that means the outcome must be the same. They must have the exact same representation in leadership positions, not in the dirty jobs, of course, but I think you know that already. It's just the nice jobs with a lot of power and money and prestige, but then again, they don't want the responsibility, and I made videos about that where you see that a lot of these young female leaders, they take the jobs, they take the money, but once something happens that they would be responsible for, or then they're gone and they're mentally not doing well, and my family, and this is really a bad time for us as a family, and all this kind of stuff that a man would never have said, and that just would not be allowed for a man to bring up as an excuse. These kinds of excuses from a man just wouldn't be tolerated by the public. So these were kinds of the thoughts that ran through my head when I read this headline about this young, I think she's 19, this young Chinese tennis player who unfortunately had to deal with some female biology at a time when she needed to compete in a tennis match. Now circling back to sports, I also noticed that female athletes in certain sports, they demand the same pay and the same airtime as their male colleagues when just, nobody really watches these sports like female football or certain other things. I think in the US there is also a discussion always with women's basketball teams or something like that. And these are just not very popular spectator sports. I mean, women are more than half of the population. If they all would watch women's sports, then they would have a lot of spectators and they would have a lot of advertisement income and it would be a big industry. But nobody really seems to be interested in that. And that is, of course, including the female population. Sports is, of course, entertainment, and that means the more eyeballs, the more attention, the more viewers you have, the more money will be made in that industry, and that is just where the money comes from. It is interesting that these female athletes don't seem to understand, or they claim that they don't understand what the economic basis of their occupation actually is. They are entertainers. Now, I think that especially when it comes to certain sports like tennis or beach volleyball, I think women, especially young women, they have an edge here. Anna Kurnikova was such a case. She didn't do that exceptionally well on the court, but she did extremely well when it came to advertisement income. So I think she didn't complain about being a woman then. It is also noticeable that male tennis players peak much later in their career performance-wise as opposed to female ones, but that is a completely different point. So yeah, I don't know if some censors in China got really nervous right now when one of their top tennis players says she wants to transition to being a man in a certain situation. I mean, that's a pretty trans statement, don't you think? I don't know how the Chinese Communist Party thinks about that, but maybe this flies under their radar and they don't understand it in this way. Anyways, let me know when you made experiences like that, or maybe something was on the news in your country where women said, oh, I wish to be a man, but just in this very special situation. That would be interesting for me to read and maybe for others too. Take care, Servus, Kameraden.